you will find that the power of influence is so much more powerful when you do this. I just want to reiterate it, that it's not about scheming and it's not about planning. It's about allowing our truth and our authenticity to lead. And that's where the magic happens. Hello and welcome to the Unlock Lab. I am so glad you're here. This is episode 38, and today I'm talking about influencing change. This is part 2 of a 3-part series. If you're new to the podcast, then welcome. I'm Tosca DiMatteo, founder of Tosca Coaching and Consulting. I do speaking, facilitation, and coaching on topics around the intersection of personal growth and professional breakthroughs. So if you're feeling stuck, if you're needing some inspiration, please learn more at coachtosca.com. That's Coach, Tosca.com. So here's the deal. It's Monday, October 28th, and I know that this episode is dropping the week of elections. First of all, I'm still just buzzing off of coming back from Portland, Maine, and doing my talk about influencing change there. I'm also a bit in recovery from that whole experience, but I really just didn't want to miss recording this episode for you because I wanted to continue this 3-part series on what it means to influence change. And yes, it matters that you are stepping up to the plate. It matters that you are choosing to opt into your life, to opt into serving the greater good of humanity, to opt into becoming the best version of yourself. Fill in the blank in terms of where you feel the draw to influence change. And that might be within yourself and it might be with your external world. But I'm just glad you're here to solidify how powerful you are in this journey. Now, episode 1, I talked about the juxtaposition of what influence actually is. And just as a reminder, it's a juxtaposition of owning and activating our immense power to influence change while also accepting that we are not in control. We're not in control of the outcomes, and we're certainly not in control of other people's choices. With that, I talked about, well, how do we actually drive change? Like, how do we actually move the needle forward? And what it means is we have to drive change together, that this is not an individual sport. And the very first step of co-creation is to start with yourself. It's to start with identifying what it is that you actually want in this whole situation, whatever that situation may be. Maybe you're negotiating a salary. Maybe you're trying to influence some behavior changes on your team. Maybe you're looking for a job. But we have to start with understanding the deepest layer of what it is that we want, because this is our compass. This is our compass for everything. And what we tend to do is we tend to stay at the surface level of our desires. We stay at the level of, oh, I want this title. I want this money. I want this company, or I want this really big outcome that's maybe not even possible in my lifetime, but that's what I'm striving for. We have to really make sure we're looking and digging below the surface and saying, what is it that I really want? Because this is how we play the long game. This is how we get through the most difficult moments of the change we're looking to go after, because we're super, super connected to what it is that we want. One of the things I will say about this too is to pay attention to what it is you're actually running towards versus what is it you're running away from. Because those are 2 different energies of, if we're just running away from something, then we may not be really clearly connected with what it is that we want, because we're actually more focused about leaving what it is that we don't want. And that can be a slippery slope, because you can end up somewhere that actually isn't the best next step for you, because you're just willing to take anything to get there. And look, this can be a job. This can be a relationship. It can be a lot of different things. It's okay to be running away from something. I'm not saying that that's not okay. It's okay to know that something has run its course. But if your main motivation, if your main objective is the running away part, and you're not actually focused on the, what am I going towards? What is it I really want right now and in the long term? Then it's a bit of a red flag. So just pay attention. And part of understanding what it is that you really want requires going below the surface, right? I think we tend to stay at the surface level of what we want. And this work requires a deep understanding of both the long term and the short term of our deepest desires. As an example, there's a friend of mine, and she's in this deep negotiation process, and how she started to orient herself around what she wanted was this immediate here and now. Like, what do I want right now? But I invited her to actually zoom out and say, well, what is it you actually want for your life? Like, what is that long term goal? And then how does this fit into it? And once we can have that perspective of zooming out and asking ourselves that deeper, like, where am I going? Where am I trying to get to? Who am I trying to be? It can become a whole lot clearer and simpler to understand what's most important in this moment. So, for example, what she realized is she's trying to move her career in a whole new trajectory, in a whole new arena. And by understanding that this current job is actually going to be in the rearview mirror before too long, she realized what she actually needed was space in her life to go after what's next. And you can imagine how that would play out in negotiation and in terms of priorities and how she chose to influence what it is that she wanted. So that's just one example of we must look deeply at what we want in the long term, in the short term, and we have to look at what's most important to have a priority order, really, a pecking order, because otherwise we can be trying to influence everything and it can be really hard to move the needle in that way, as opposed to taking one thing at a time. And of course, this always depends on the particular situation, but I'm using this broad stroke paintbrush to help you see the factors of really successfully influencing change. Now, the other piece about doing this work, when you really deep dive into what is it that I actually want, and most people that come to me, they really don't know. They come to me when something has run its course and they're not fulfilled and they're not happy and they just don't know what's next or they don't know what to do about it. Part of what it takes to look at what it is you want is to also look at how are you defining success and where perhaps does success need to be redefined. Now, I did a whole episode on redefining success, but just to, again, broad stroke with you here, when we can define success in ways that we can control, it can make that journey of influencing change a whole lot easier because we can celebrate when we're doing the things that we think honor where it is that we're going. For example, for me, right? Let's just take this podcast, right? My big goal is to reach as many people as I can. And to a large extent, I'm not in control of how many people listen to this thing, especially because it's organic right now. And I'm not putting paid advertising against it. So how do I define success with my podcast? Because it might be really sad to look at the listenership numbers, right? But I redefine success to say, you know what, for me, it's about consistency. It's about showing up and doing the podcast and just honoring that I want to get the messages out there. That's why I think I started this whole episode with like, I just want to come on here, even though I'm kind of still recovering from my keynote address. And I just want to be here with you and sharing these important messages. That's kind of the first piece that I wanted to share with you today, right? Which is really get a clear understanding of what it is that you desire, because you are the first ingredient of the equation of change. And the very first step as the first ingredient is to get really clear on what you want. So have fun with it too, right? You might need some time to dream. You might need some time to journal. You might want to talk to some friends about this. It can be very hard to discover this on your own, especially when we've just been accepting what we're given. And that's why I really drive this point home, is because especially for women, we have been taught to just take what we get and be happy with it and don't question it and don't ask for more. But this work requires that we ask ourselves what we really want, because this is what will keep us going in the hardest parts of our journey of driving change. Before we step in to influencing others in whatever it is that we want, we must get our heart and head operating together. Influencing change is most powerful when you are open to that co creation process that I've been talking about. Being open is a journey because we tend to live in our heads. Our society and our past experiences and our big T traumas and our little T traumas often lead us to live in our head and try to figure everything out in our head all the time. And personally, this has certainly been my journey of leading my life for many, many years. And a big part of that is because growing up, I was heartbroken every day. Whether it was a kid ignoring me, whether it was somebody making fun of me, it was hard to feel my feelings. So I moved my operating system from my heart to my head. And I continued on that path for a long, long time. And in the world in which we are driven by the masculine and we're driven by patriarchy and we're driven by process and efficiency and all of these things, we can end up being in our head trying to figure it out versus giving the baton over to our heart to lead our operating system, to honor that it is the heart that moves and it is the heart that challenges and embraces. It is the heart that knows. It's most expansive. And it's our minds that are complementary to our heart and not the other way around. But we live in that reverse mode most of the time. So we have to get our heads and our hearts open and operating in balance together. Prime example in my preparation for giving this keynote talk that I gave in Portland, Maine last week. My gosh, I hit a major melting point in in the preparation process. And that melting point happened because I was so stuck on the script that I wrote. So I was in my head about the script that I wrote, and I wanted the script to come out every time I gave the talk because that was the flow. And I worked so hard on it. And I wanted it to work out the way that I wrote it. And I was holding on for dear life to this script. Now, maybe there's some perfectionism in there, but there's definitely this idea of being in control and also operating from my headspace. I had to have a conversation with my keynote coach, Julie Fogg, who's from Vital Voice Training. She's spectacular. And I'm literally having a meltdown with her as I'm trying to go through this talk just a few days before. She had to really beat it into me, for lack of a better term, to get out of my head, to let my heart take control, to let my inner knowing lead me, to lead from my heart space, because it is from that heart space that influence is most potent and powerful. And that's why we have to pass the baton to our heart, because this is where our power is. Our most beautiful power is in that space. So whether you're walking into work and you're having a stressful day and you're trying to figure it all out, or whether you're in a relationship and you keep asking yourself, why does this person keep doing this thing? The antidote for this is to move into your heart space. The antidote is to keep your heart open and see what's possible from there. You picking up what I'm putting down? If you've just been operating in your headspace and you just are like, well, I'm really good at figuring stuff out, then this is going to be a very tough concept and you're going to have a lot of resistance to it. So, my invitation is to experiment. What does it feel like to pass that baton? And try it in something very small and experimental. Maybe it doesn't have to be in that most important conversation that you're going to have with your boss today, but maybe it's having a conversation with your kid about them not doing that thing that annoys you. Or maybe it's having a conversation with your friend, or just something where you get to play a little bit and say, how does it feel when I'm in my head versus how does it feel when I'm operating from my heart space? And sometimes this work requires stillness and sitting with yourself and letting the thoughts go that are coming up so that you can be in the heart space, right? I'm talking about meditation techniques. This could be a whole podcast in and of itself, how to get out of our heads and into our hearts. And you will find that the power of influence is so much more powerful when you do this. I just want to reiterate it, that it's not about scheming and it's not about planning. It's about allowing our truth and our authenticity to lead And that's where the magic happens. And the last thing that I wanted to share with you on this particular episode is that once you've centered yourself, right? Once you've honored that it matters what you want in this equation, once you have looked at, am I operating from my heart space or my head space? Are they in balance? Are they working together? Once you've done that work, then you're ready to influence. And the next ingredient of that equation of change involves centering your audience. It's about removing your ego. It's about understanding the person in front of you, understanding what they want, understanding what their feelings are, understanding where they're trying to go. And gosh, that can be tough because we may have come into this situation with some judgment, or we may have come into this situation with some frustration. And that's why that centering yourself is first and foremost the thing that needs to happen. Because then when you go to center your audience, you're ready for it. You're ready to listen first. It's like that age old quote, seek first to understand, then be understood. Centering your audience is taking a step back. It is listening and asking really great questions. And one of the practices, the mindsets, the experimentation that I offer in terms of, well, how do you center your audience is to be a consultant. And even if you've never been a consultant in your life, it is something that everybody can do. It's about asking open ended questions. It's also about honoring that maybe you don't know everything that you think you know about the other person. Really stepping back and showing that you care, that they are a part of the equation of the change, and also inviting them in to the vision. What is it that they want? And co creating that vision. It's so much more powerful when the folks that we're looking to influence are really bought in to where we're trying to go, because that means they will be more emotionally invested, more energetically invested into where it is we're collectively trying to go with our shared goals and our shared dreams. We have a tendency to make everything about ourselves, you know? And when we do that, influencing others is going to be a much harder go because other people feel where your intentions are and where your heart is, you know? That's why we have to really be clear with what it is that we want so that we can then be open to understanding what it is that other people want and what's going on in their world, and also what's actually in the best interest of everybody involved. And this takes maybe some compromise. It takes removing our bruised egos, and it takes taking a step back. And how you show up to these conversations, what mindset you're in, what state you're in, is going to make a big difference. One of the most important things that you can do in terms of having these conversations and centering your audience is setting yourself up for success to do so. To make sure that you have either blocked some time on your calendar to get into the right heart space and mind space before having perhaps a difficult conversation. Maybe it means honoring, like if you woke up on the wrong side of the bed that day, that is not going to be the day to have a conversation. But sometimes we rush into things because we, we're on these timelines, but what we don't realize is maybe actually throw the timeline away and honor what's actually going to serve the objective of the change you're looking to influence. And this can be a big reset for folks because people just, they're like, well, but the meeting was set for 3 o'clock. It's okay. It's okay. You can reschedule. You have that authority and you have that power. Take it back instead of leaking energy all over the place and negatively impacting the output that you want for yourself and for the situation. You picking up what I'm putting down? If you haven't caught on, let me put it to you this way. Yes, all change starts with ourselves. All change starts with taking a look at ourselves first and foremost, so that when we show up in the equation of change, we know we're showing up in the best possible way that we can. And that is how we successfully accomplish what it is we're looking to accomplish. We can't point the finger. We can't be placing blame. We have to come back to our center and operate from that place with an open mind and open heart. All right, you guys. Well, I hope that you are taking advantage of influencing change by going to the polls, because I'm a big believer in opting in to life, to the future that you desire. And everybody counts in this process. Even if you live in a state where you're like, well, I know exactly how this is going to go. Let me tell you, the history books will show what the people actually wanted. And I think that's worth fighting for your part of history and your part of the collective, because there's more things to change in this world than just the outcome. It's the process too. So when we choose to participate in the process, then we are not giving our power away, because otherwise you're just letting everybody else choose the future for you. But that's all I'm going to say about that. I couldn't not say it. I think this is going to literally drop on election day. I hope this inspires you to take action. It does matter. Putting your voice out there does matter. You are saying what it is that you want for this country. And I don't care what side you're on. I think it matters that the history will show what the people wanted, and the stories that are told will be more accurate as a result. So thank you so much for tuning in. And especially if you are one of the folks that I met in Portland, Maine at the Maine Women's Conference, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad that you're tuning into my podcast. And I hope you listen to some of the other episodes before this moment. There's some great nuggets in there. And if you do, and if you find value in this podcast, then I would love for you to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. It would mean a great deal. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for standing in your power and choosing to influence a better tomorrow. I'm here for it. And if there's anything I can do to support you and the tomorrow that you're looking for, please reach out. All my contact can be found in the show notes. Thank you so much, and happy November, and ciao for now.